The UK and Germany have signed the biggest treaty between the two countries since the Second World War, with defence at its centre. It's all part of a broader push by the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer to reset EU relations post-Brexit. And it follows President Macron's state visit last week. So, what did Starmer and Merz agree? And what's the real reason behind it all? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, Friedrich Merz and Keir Starmer have signed an Anglo-German treaty, which the British Prime Minister described as the first of its kind ever between the two countries. It covers defence, energy, trade and migration, with Keir Starmer saying it was a statement of intent to work closer together. So, what does this all mean for UK-German relations and European security?
For the second time in 2 weeks, the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer hosted another European leader after Macron's state visit. This time it was German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. During his visit, the two leaders signed the Kensington Treaty. It is the first formal pact between the UK and Germany since 1945. The agreement sets out plans for closer cooperation on migration, defence, trade and education.
It's a privilege to have you here today, particularly to sign this Kensington Treaty, which is a very special treaty because it's the first of its kind ever, if you can believe it, between our two countries.
Starmer confirmed that Germany would amend domestic law to tackle illegal migration by allowing authorities to seize boat engines and smuggling components destined for channel crossings.
I want to thank Friedrich for his leadership on this, pledging decisive action to strengthen German law this year so that small boats being stored or transported in Germany can be seized, disrupting the route to the UK.
The two countries also pledged to work together on defence issues of mutual interest, including a promise to come to one another's aid in the event of an armed attack.
Russia is shaking the foundations of the European security architecture, and transatlantic relations are changing in ways not seen for a long time. Under these new conditions, we want to secure the freedom, security and prosperity of our two countries with the treaty we have signed today.
Merz and Starmer also discussed ways of boosting European support for Ukraine, following United States President Donald Trump's announcement of a plan to bolster Kiev's stockpile by selling US weapons to NATO allies who would in turn send arms to Kiev. The treaty aligns the UK more closely with Europe's two largest powers working to tackle security and migration together, alongside the French. So how historic is this agreement, and has Starmer managed to thaw UK relations with Europe since Brexit?
Well, let's meet our guests on this one. Joining us from Berlin, we have Aris. Ben is founder and editor-in-chief of IntelliNews. In Edinburgh, in Scotland, we have Stuart Crawford. Stuart is a former British Army officer and defence analyst. And in Paris, France, we have the journalist Elaine Cobbe. You're all very welcome to this roundtable. Ben, to you first of all, I get the impression these two countries feel they can no longer count on America, so they have to rely on each other. Is that what's behind this?
Precisely. I think that's exactly what's going on. I mean, since Trump came in, he's following this transactional policy of his, where he's basically taking himself out of the international game and going into an isolationist, protectionist mindset. And that's particularly relevant in Europe's case, which has been nestling under the US security umbrella since the end of the Second World War. And suddenly that's been snapped shut. And so now Europe is rushing around trying to rethink their strategy, particularly on defense, but also on trade and economics. I mean, Trump just hit Europe with a 30% tariff, and that's going to be incredibly painful. And so they need to coordinate, Europeans, they need to coordinate their response in that, in the negotiations with Trump. And consequently, these relationships have become more important than ever. I mean, the need to coordinate, particularly between the big powers, Germany, UK, France, in order to present a united front to Trump on the one side, but also a united front to Putin on the other side, because of this large war that's going on in the backyard.
Elaine, to you, How important is this relationship now at the heart of Europe? You're seeing the UK and Germany, firm friends. The Chancellor and the Prime Minister clearly get on. What's your reading of this relationship?
It's very important for both countries and for the EU. Just a couple of years ago, we'd all have been surprised if you'd said we're all going to Britain and saying, come back, come back. Not exactly back, but please, let's do things together again. And yes, I think a lot of it is because the US is just not the same ally it was, and it's not reliable, it's too unpredictable. And so it's in Britain's interests to have these bilateral meetings, but it's also in the interest of EU countries. We saw France in Britain just last week, and very much also keen to talk about European issues, about immigration, about Ukraine, and about the nuclear umbrella, because of course France and Britain are the two European nations who have nuclear weapons, and that is something that they're very aware is important right now.
Thanks, Elaine. Stuart, are we seeing the UK and Germany effectively putting themselves at the heart of a revitalised NATO now in Europe?
Yes, I think that's very much the case, and my fellow panelists have underlined some of the main issues already. I think that the driver of all of this is the fact, as my fellow panelists have already said, that Trump's America can no longer be seen as a reliable ally. And Trump is unpredictable, and we don't really know what's going to happen next, but it's quite clear that they have pivoted towards the Indo-Pacific theatre and away from Europe. And to be fair to Trump, he has been saying for some time that Europe had to pay more money or to take a bigger responsibility for the defense of Europe because we've been riding on the America's coattails for too long. And I think he's absolutely right in that. And we're now seeing that beginning, not only with the agreement, the Kensington Treaty, if you want to call it that, with Germany, but also moving closer to President Macron's France. And so in terms of European NATO, I think that these three countries, the E3, as they call themselves, are now very much at the heart of NATO and very much in support of Ukraine and against Putin's Russia.
Thanks, Stuart. Ben, to you, this is a very strong message to send to Putin's Russia, isn't it? Just talk to me about how German people are feeling about doing this deal with the United Kingdom and this firm friendship now we're seeing.
Yeah, the Germans, I think, had pretty much sort of given up on the UK after Brexit. They're very keen followers of the European Union and then believe in what it stands for. And then for the UK to decide to go didn't go down very well. But now things have changed. I mean, now that Europe is effectively, as they see it, under attack, what worries the Germans is the possibility of Putin going beyond Ukraine and into the Baltics through Poland and ending up in Berlin again. And so this concern, the Bundeswehr, the army paper last month saying that there's a real possibility that within 5 years that Russia will attack NATO. And as a result, it's reaching out to the allies again. It makes a strong Europe, a coordinated Europe. Von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, has been talking about rearming Europe. And a lot of money is being earmarked to go into defense. And the Germans have one of the biggest armies. They certainly have the biggest arms industry in Europe. And so it's going to play a key role. But then the UK has exactly the same. It also has a big arms industry and has been a very ardent supporter of Ukraine. And so they're obvious to tie up in defense against the perceived threat of Putin.
Elaine, to you, I notice away from security and defence, there's one issue that has been signed off on this deal that a lot of UK travellers will be very happy about, and it's the issue of using e-gates when they fly into Germany. So this deal will effectively allow air passengers from the United Kingdom to use those e-gates and avoid the kind of queues we've seen post-Brexit if you have a UK passport.
That will make life a lot easier for people coming from Britain, not only on holidays, but for business. And it makes it much easier for them also then to travel through the rest of the Schengen zone. Because once you're in, you're okay, you can go anywhere. And it will make a big difference. It really is very much another little step towards bringing Britain back into Europe, if not the EU. And it will make a big difference also, I think, for many business people who have been saying the effort every single time. If they are bringing products to show or if they have equipment, they have to have a carnet. It takes at least an hour every single time, usually up to 3 hours, so that they show the long list of everything they bring in, and they have to show the long list of everything they bring out. And if they can use e-gates, it makes that a lot simpler. And then, it's a first step also in easing a lot of the other restrictions like the carnets.
Elaine, you covered the Brexit saga. Do you get the impression Starmer is slowly unpicking it bit by bit to make life more tolerable for UK travellers around Europe?
I think he is. He may not be going to the heart of Brexit trade deals, but I think he sees the importance of coming closer to Europe, accepting Britain's place in geographical Europe, and saying, look, these are our real allies. We really need to pay more attention to it. And I think that's a big part of what is a new style Britain, a new UK, that they're saying, we really need them, and wouldn't life be simpler if we didn't have to find ourselves surrounded by water on all sides and unable to go anywhere fast?
Stuart, in terms of European security going forward, as a continent, Europe really needs a strong UK, a strong Germany and France. I mean, these three countries are the absolute nexus, the fulcrum of everything that's going on in European defence right now.
Yes, I would agree with that in general terms. You might add Italy to that as well, perhaps. But certainly Germany has got a very impressive and significant land force and air force. The UK, less significant and impressive land force, but very strong in naval and air force terms. And of course, France seems to be increasing its defence budget all the time and be better at spending its money on defence items. And the UK and France also bring their strategic nuclear deterrent, which Germany doesn't have at the moment. So yes, very much the centre of it. I think that we need to also to look at Poland, which is rearming rapidly, and the Baltic states, which also, being on the front line with Russia, are also taking their defence posture very seriously indeed. And then on top of that, the two latest accedents to NATO, Finland and Sweden, which also have very impressive defence capabilities. So I think we're seeing the beginning of a coordinated establishment of European defence, which can be implemented in the absence of the USA in whatever circumstances those might be.
Thanks, Stuart. Ben, I notice in the detail of this deal between the UK and Germany, there is the issue of people smuggling. Now, a lot of people watching may not be aware that it is currently not illegal to aid people smuggling in Germany. And the British intelligence suggests that a lot of those rigid inflatable boats and dinghies that we see on the beaches in northern France are actually stored by criminal gangs in German warehouses. So this pact is going to see German law change to actually tackle these people smugglers.
The problem is that you can buy dinghies online, and that's not illegal. And the German forces, the German investigators, they don't have any legal authority to go after someone who's buying dinghies in Germany, storing them in a warehouse, and then shipping them onto northern France so that they can be used to smuggle people across the border. And what's being discussed today, as far as I understand it, is to create some sort of legal precedent to allow the investigators to act. Because, as I say, if you buy a dinghy around Berlin, everybody goes boating at the weekend when it's hot. But then Merz, in this sense, is stepping up and helping Starmer out, because Starmer needs a way to actually, it's about the logistics chain. They want to break the logistics chain that's supplying these smugglers, and they haven't been able to do it. They can only act at the point where people get into boats and get into the water and try and arrive on British shores. But now you can go back to the source, and you can actually investigate and break up these gangs at source and deprive them of the logistics that support that business.
Elaine, Keir Starmer said when he became Prime Minister just over a year ago, he wanted to smash the gangs. That was the phrase he used. We're seeing him exert pressure on the French? Macron was in London a couple of weeks ago. We're seeing him now get this deal over the line with Germany. He is slowly turning up the heat, tightening the screws on these criminal gangs.
He is, but there is still the fundamental problem that they are coming from countries in the east and heading all the way across Western Europe to try to get to Britain, because they strongly believe that that is their best chance, that they'll get jobs, they'll get money, they'll get immigration status. And France has long been saying, why are we the last bastion? It's, they don't want to stay in France. You send them back to France, they will leave again. It's not that they were in France and left. France is somewhere they're going through. So privately, officials here are saying, very happy the Germans are now getting in on this, because then it's starting to hit that smuggling and hit the traffic earlier in the chain. And the French feel that that is the best way to deal with it, because leaving it till the last minute to everyone in Calais on those long stretches of beaches, going at night to try to get across the water, that it's not just a British French problem. And so, there's a lot of attention here being paid to what else can be done farther back the chain. And this could be the start of other deals as well. Like Italy already has so many arriving on the shores of Italy. Is that somewhere else that should be looked at for stopping them if they want to go farther, as in all the way to the UK?
Thanks, Elaine. Stuart, to you. So we're seeing the UK and Germany militarily work closer together. Do you think Macron might feel that the French are being a little bit squeezed out here?
Well, I think that the French are always going to feel slightly different about this sort of thing. But I don't think they're being squeezed out at all. In fact, I think that Starmer is courting the French in many ways to try and realise this vision of a sort of centralised European defence posture. And so far, he's been really quite successful. Macron has visited, the German Chancellor has now visited, and so the whole thing is coming together. I think, if I may just comment on the illegal migrant thing, I suspect that stopping the boats and stopping the illegal migrants is going to be the one subject or the one topic on which the success or otherwise of Starmer's premiership will be judged. And that's why it's so important to get that sorted out. It's a major talking point in the UK, no matter what the social opinion polls tell you. And it's got to be fixed. And most people can't really believe that it hasn't been fixed already.
And Stuart, I think you're right. The numbers do not point towards success. I mean, 21,000 people have illegally entered the UK in this manner this year. Starmer, by any metric, is failing worse than his predecessor.
No, I think that's absolutely right. I think that one of the things that has to be tackled, sadly, is the fact that coming to the UK has got to be made a less attractive option for people who are essentially economic migrants. And you can't blame anybody for seeking a better life. But at the moment, the UK is arguably being swamped by mainly young men in their 20s and being housed at the expense of the British taxpayer. And it has to be tackled in a more cogent way so that, yes, we're open to immigration, because immigration has always been part of British history, but we can't be swamped by people here who either come on false pretenses or are not going to contribute to society.
Thanks, Stuart. Ben, to you, I want to talk about the issue of youth mobility. The Germans are very keen to get this into the mix, into the conversation, so that young Germans can come to the UK, study, travel, stay for a period if they so wish. Starmer's under pressure to kind of cut back numbers coming here. How do you think they're going to square that between Merz and Starmer?
Well, it's a tricky issue. I mean, you mentioned there's been 21,000 illegal immigrants. There's about 30,000 the previous 2 years. However, the UK in total had a net immigration of some 650,000 last year. And of that, just under 500,000 are students. And again, London remains to the rest of Europe an extremely attractive, fun place to go. People want to go to the UK. People want to study. The UK still has some of the best education in the world, Cambridge, Oxford, etc. And so that's very important. And keeping the students out, making it difficult for them, has been a serious downside. And it goes the other way too. I mean, for British students who want to come and study in Europe.
Elaine, just come in on that point about youth mobility. I mean, European Union passport holders' life is a lot more simple. We're seeing Starmer clearly unpick a lot of what many people feel was the damage of Brexit. I mean, he's only 12 months into his premiership, but he's zoning in on a lot of issues, isn't he?
He is, and it certainly will make a difference for, as we were just saying, for students, for people who want to have a wider education if they want to go and learn English. For a lot of people were saying, you know, my plans were to study English or English Lit and go to Britain, and now they couldn't. So it does open up all of those possibilities. There were so many limitations on movement introduced in Brexit, and it came as a huge shock to continental Europeans who were used to being able to just hop on a train and go anywhere. And the number of people, particularly at the start, who found themselves stopped at the border, at St. Pancras, at London, wherever, and saying, what do you mean I need a visa, or I need a visa waiver or something? Why would I need that? So it's something that will make a big difference to how people also see Britain, because let's not forget, there was a lot of perhaps anger, but also a little resentment that Britain decided, we're just going it alone because we don't need any of you. So this is kind of a softly approach to say, we'd like to have you back in our lives. We'd like to be back in your lives. Can we work something out?
Thanks, Elaine. Stuart, back to military spending. It's very interesting to note that Germany is actually speeding up its defence spending at a faster rate than the UK and France.
Oh, yes, indeed. I think that the catalyst for this was a change in German law, which allowed them to borrow more money to facilitate defence spending, because there is this realization that Europe is not as safe a place as perhaps it once was. And I mean, Britain was very reluctantly dragged into pledging to spend 5% of its GDP by 2035 or 2034, but was mainly forced to do so by Trump and Trump's demands on his NATO allies. So I think overall, everybody has had to wake up to the idea that defence spending has to go up. How it's going to be done in the UK without increasing income tax is beyond me, to be honest, because there are so many other demands on the annual government budget that I don't think it can be done without an increase in income tax, which of course is a huge vote loser in a general election, so we are told. But just coming back to the whole penalties of Brexit, etc., I would just postulate that Starmer may only have one term in government, which will end by 2029 at the latest. And it's very possible, not probable, but possible, that the next Prime Minister in the UK will be Nigel Farage, who of course was the champion of Brexit. So who knows what will happen in the future?
We will watch with bated breath on that one. Ben, to you, again, another part of this pact and deal between Germany and the UK. We will see defence companies working more closely together to produce various different weaponry and vehicles. So it's a win-win in that respect too.
Enormous amounts of money are going to go into defence. But, to pick up on Stuart's point, the problem is that what happened is that over the last 30 years, that there's been massive underinvestment into defence in Europe and in Germany in particular. To give you an example, in 1991, Germany had 4,000 tanks. Today it has 400, and half of those don't work. Now, suddenly Europe's in a position where it needs to supply Ukraine, a full-scale war. I mean, it's just the basics with artillery shells. Ukraine's burning through 1 million a year, and we just simply don't produce them. And suddenly, with withdrawal of American support, the NATO Article 5 guarantee is no longer a given. The terms of the text is actually it's an option. It's not automatic that the US has to come to Europe's defense if Russia attacks it. And so there's this massive scramble going on in order to get the defense sector into shape. But von der Leyen, in her rearm speech in Brussels in March, I mean, she pointed out, rightfully, that actually at the moment, Putin's put the entire Russian economy onto a war footing for 3 years. And so the money's going to be spent, and it has to be spent, because we need to bring Europe's defenses up to the point where they can actually realistically rebuff an armed Russian invasion. And at the moment, you know, that doesn't actually look so good, that we'll run out of ammunition after a few months.
Stuart, just briefly, final point to you. Students of history around the world looking at this, the UK and Germany, now firm friends, a defence pact together. A few people might raise an eyebrow here.
Well, yes, I mean, the last century was sadly one of conflict between Germany and Britain for much of the time. But if you go further back in history and look at the Battle of Waterloo, won by the Duke of Wellington, but arguably won by the Prussian army under Marshal Blucher. So I don't think that we should be too short-sighted in looking back in history. And an alliance between Germany and the UK is a perfectly feasible and welcome thing.
Stuart, thank you, and to Elaine and Ben in Berlin as well. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable TRT World. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, and all the team here, goodbye, and thank you for watching.